Hello everybody, hi. Today I'm going to talk about a couple ways that you can help a person in your life that has PTSD or complex PTSD. I acknowledge fully that it can be really hard to navigate situations in general with somebody you love that has PTSD. There isn't much conversation about PTSD outside of war veterans, so it's hard for most of the population, I would assume, to understand how people get traumatized and how it impacts them and so on and so forth. Here's just a few things that I find would really help me if somebody was having a conversation with me about my mental illness. The first bit of advice that I can give you is to just listen. It's just like in any other social interaction where if somebody is looking for advice, they might ask you, or they might be super vague and be like, I don't know what I would do in this situation. But if there are no hints or clues that this person is looking for advice when speaking of their trauma, just listen and acknowledge what they're saying, because a lot of the time when I'm talking about my trauma, I'm either just venting about it or I'm completely dissociated and have no idea what I'm even talking about, and it just is part of the process. It just has to come out. I try to save that for my therapist, but sometimes it comes out with my family and friends, and sorry. Something that goes hand in hand with that is try not to make the person discussing their trauma feel like a burden to you, because chances are we already realize that that it's not fun to talk about. A lot of the time I feel like I'm just repeating the same stuff to my loved ones, and I have amazing people in my life, so they never make me feel like I'm a burden to them. But it's very easy to make somebody sense that they're a burden on you. My advice in that situation would be, if somebody brings up part of their PTSD that you've heard before, maybe multiple times, don't whip out the, oh yeah, I know, you told me that already. It might just be a thing that has to come out. It's really hard to explain, but sometimes we just have to talk these things out. It's part of our brain trying to process the trauma and trying to make sense of it, I guess. And thank you so much for listening when we talk to you. I don't think that's something that gets said enough. As much as people with PTSD go unnoticed and unacknowledged, the people who are there to support them deserve all the credit in the world for being just perfect angels. We love you, even if we don't say it as much as we should. Something else that really helps is when people respect the fact that it's essentially a disability. It can be so debilitating. Some days depression and anxiety can be symptoms of PTSD, and some days you can't drag yourself out of bed. Physically, you cannot. If you can, it's nearly impossible to make it through the day. If I'm dissociated, I really don't feel I should be driving or operating heavy machinery. It's just like when you take a pill that makes you drowsy. They say, hey, no driving, no operating heavy machinery. When you're not connected to your body, for me personally, it's kind of the same thing. And it's really hard to explain that to people, because when I talk about it, sometimes people don't understand that, yes, something mental can have physical side effects. Some symptoms of PTSD include, but are not limited to, dissociation, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, which I experience in my pelvic region, like around my ovaries and uterus and stuff. Chronic fatigue, which I also experience. Memory loss, losing your train of thought. The list goes on, and a lot of the symptoms are physical. It is such a breath of fresh air, and it warms the cockles of my little heart when people text me in the middle of recording a video. Cool. It just makes me feel so grateful and joyful when people understand and respect that it is a real disability. That's something that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around. Moving on. One very, very important and beautiful way. I'm speaking with my hands a lot in this video. One very magnificent way that you can support somebody who has PTSD or complex PTSD is to be open to learn about it. It just makes me feel so safe and so comforted and loved and appreciated and respected and all of those other words. When somebody makes an effort to look into my condition and understand not necessarily the inner workings of my brain, but to understand the fact that my day-to-day life is just like, pardon my French, but just a shitstorm of flashbacks. That's another symptom, flashbacks and nightmares. And that sounds very dramatic, and some days it is. On a good day, there's not much of anything. Maybe a couple flashbacks, emotional flashbacks, you know. But on a bad day, it's rough, guys. Another way that you can help somebody with PTSD or complex PTSD is to just make yourself available. And I don't mean like at all times. It's unreasonable to expect anybody to be on call 24/7 unless you're like a crisis hotline or something. But just to make yourself available to them. I don't know what it's like for everybody. Every single person with PTSD is different. But for me personally, I kind of withdraw from social situations, I guess. I get pretty introverted, I guess is an okay word for it. I just become a hermit and just don't communicate with anybody. Like, my grandmother goes months without hearing from me sometimes, and I love that woman. I'm just so not into communicating with people or leaving the house or thinking about hanging out with my friends or doing anything. And sometimes if somebody just sends me a text like, hey, do you want to go for coffee? Or insert hot beverage of your choosing, maybe cold beverage, let's get wasted! It's lit! Just reaching out and not being too proud to be the first one to talk to me all the time. I'm working on it, I promise. If you're any of my friends that I've been neglecting, if you're any of my family that I've been neglecting, I promise I love you, and I promise I think of you all the time. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so hard to reach out. But when people reach out to me, it makes it easier. It kind of opens the door for communication, if that makes any sense. I think that's it for this video. I sure hope it made sense. If you are a person who loves somebody with PTSD, thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And thank you for being open to learning more about this condition, because it's very real. And we appreciate you probably more than we ever let you know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for watching. And don't forget to be kind to yourself today and everybody else that you encounter, unless they're a jerk. Still be kind if they're a jerk. Anyway, bye!